Sometimes you hear a story and you just can't believe it. Coming up next, an unbelievable story about a beloved rock classic straight from the band. When today's lead singer was just 15 years old, he was in the middle of his high school math class. He was bored as hell, and he wrote a song, a silly song that he would later record with his band made up of school chums. And they would beg their local radio station for a year to play their rough demo. When the radio station finally relented and played it, the song blew up and went to number one. One day the singer was driving a forklift, and virtually the next day he was at number one and traveling with some of the biggest bands out there touring. And they became one of the biggest rock bands from a silly song he wrote in math class as a freshman. Coming up next, the interview with two of the nicest guys in the industry with a great story you're not going to want to miss on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love the music of the rock and roll era, you're going to love this channel where we get the stories of the songs directly from the artists who created them. Subscribe below right now so that you can be a part of this daily honor roll of hits. And click on the Patreon link for even more in the description and the merch, all that good stuff. Really excited about this episode. It's another episode from our series Revelations. Of course, this is where featured artists go deep on their greatest songs and albums. It really is insight you won't find anywhere else. Coming up, some buddies formed a band when they were 16. And within a few years, they were one of the biggest rock bands on the planet. And their biggest hit ever was written by the lead singer in math class in about 10 minutes when he's 15. Love this band or leave them. They're as nice a guys as there are in the industry. Truly a remarkable story. It was so fun interviewing these guys. Brad Arnold, lead singer, and guitarist Matt Roberts of Three Doors Down. They give us a blow-by-blow of creating Kryptonite, a song that hit number one on 3 different charts and sold 5 million copies. Here's the band with the story. It's such a cool story how WCPR FM played your demo. They played Kryptonite 15 weeks or something. It was the most requested song on that radio station. Tell me about that. That's so cool.
It was, man, and it was a blessing. You know, we didn't try to get signed. And I say it being a blessing because bands try so hard to get that break and all. And I mean, not that we didn't want to do it. You know, we tried. We practiced a lot and played shows and would try to get gigs at places that we couldn't, and, you know, we'd push it as far as we could. But, you know, we weren't trying to be like a major like touring band. We just wanted to get our song on the radio. We want our friends to hear it. And WCPR in Biloxi there, they had a local show that they would play local bands once a month on Sunday nights, and we'd go on there, and we'd done that show several times, and we begged the program director down there over and over for a year or so. He was like, please play our song. And finally he's like, okay, I'll play it. You know, but they can't really just do that. You know, they can't just decide to play some random band. But he stuck his neck out for us there, and it became the most requested song they'd ever had on that station. And they put out the BDS chart, which is a song just reflects what's been played at different stations around the country. And the labels get that chart, and they seen that we didn't have a label beside our name, and they came down and started talking to us, and it just all went from there, man. But
so amazing.
It was cool.
It's one of those like only in America stories, you know?
It really is, man. It's kind of like how, and we didn't know any different, man, because we didn't know how to go about getting signed, you know? Right. And so looking back on it, it was just, it's like you would imagine it happening in a movie. But that's really not how it happens, you know? But for us, it is.
Proof of the American dream right there,
exactly.
Man. I love it. Well, The Better Life comes out, and it's 6 times platinum, biggest rock record of the year, and of course, the biggest rock single of that year, Kryptonite, when it comes out. Number 3 on the Hot 100 overall chart. I mean, now you have so many different charts out. For a rock band, to hit number 3 at that time, because this was when teen pop and NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears, all that stuff was kind of ruling the radio, and for you guys to come out as a rock band and keep rock and roll alive and take it to number 3, but also number 1 on the rock charts for 9 weeks, number 1 on the alternative charts for another 11 weeks. I mean, this was a huge song, and in Canada, it also hit number 1 on the RPM charts as well. Tell me about that, because it's so cool. You wrote it when you were 15 in class.
Man, you know? I don't think, we were just like, okay. Yeah, I mean, we didn't know any difference because it was the first, and again, it was one of those things where bands strive and struggle and scrape and scheme and do all this to do that. And for us, we were like, wow, we got a lot of shows coming up.
Yeah.
We went from literally, I was driving a stinking forklift in an electric motor shop, and a month later we were making a record. Mm-hmm. 2 months after that, we were opening for Creed, and we were on tour with those guys. And then shortly after that, we were headlining from then on.
Yeah.
Of playing arenas that, I'd probably been to less than like 15 concerts. And and a lot of those songs on our Better Life record, some of those songs, Life of My Own was on that record. It was like the second song I ever wrote. And it was unbelievable for us because we didn't know any different. And we seen those charts and we were like, it was so surreal to see your name like not on a chart, but above somebody's name on a chart that you were like, that you would you'd be in amazement to just see like their name up there somewhere and your name like down here somewhere. And your name was like right there. And it was unbelievable. It was cool. It's cool to think back on. And it was, I don't know, somehow you can wrap your head around it more looking back on it.
Yeah, it's like a whole section of our life was just about getting on a bus and going to another town. It was like family, everything just kind of stopped around us and it became just about that. And it was so fast-paced, and they always tell it like, we were thrust into it, and we were playing with bands that had been doing it a really long time that were really good at it. And we were trying to be as good as them.
Yeah.
It's almost, you know what I mean? Like you have to get some seat time, man. It's like being a NASCAR driver. You got to drive around that track a few 100,000 times before you're good at it.
Yeah.
And so we just held on tight, man. And it was a lot of fun.
That was an education, man.
It was an education, whether we liked it or not.
Our first tour, it was Creed and Seven Dust and us. And like he said, we were just like a local band. We'd never been out much. And we were playing right before Seven Dust.
Yep.
If you ever would just want to get blown off the earth, go play a show right before Seven Dust.
Yep.
Yep. And those guys, they're a great bunch of guys, but a great freaking band.
Best live band ever.
And we were just playing right before them, and we were up there like, I was still wondering what to do with my hands because when we were a local band, I was the drummer and the singer.
Yeah.
And when we got signed and all that, we got a drummer.
Went out front.
Yeah, and I'd never, like my first show to play from behind the drums
Mobile
was in Mobile, Alabama
Bayfest.
at Bayfest, and it was probably, 10, 12,000 people standing there?
Yeah, there's lots.
Jeez.
Put it in my pocket for a little while.
Yeah.
So take me back to when you're 15 and you're drumming in class because you hated math. I did too. I was horrible at math. But tell us that story because that's one of the most distinct parts of that song is the way that you play the drums.
And that lick was nothing more but just tapping on a desk, And it's a simple little lick, but it kind of inspired that song, And I got into songwriting through just writing poems. I used to really like writing poems. And right before lunch, I had algebra class like right after lunch, and I had creative writing right before lunch. And I think a lot of the reason I would sit in that class so much and write is because, you kind of get those exercises going, get your brain going in creative writing. And I really enjoyed that. And then you kind of have a break for lunch and you go talk to your friends. And it seems like it would always kind of like spur some little idea or something. I'd sit in there and write. And that day, that was just the song that came out. I wrote the lyrics to that song in probably 10 minutes. Took it to band practice that day and we put the music to it in another 15, 20 minutes. And it never changed. It stayed just like that and it's just like it is now. It was kind of interesting. We recorded the song a few months later, and that's the song that WCPR started playing, and that's the recording of it they started playing. And when we went back and recorded the Better Life record, we really, really, really tried to not change that song at all. And even still, when they played it on CPR down there, people were like, y'all changed it. I was like, man, no, we didn't. No, we didn't.
Well, I've always read that when you talk about the lyrics of that song that it's a question in a way is, will you be there for me? And not only in the bad times, but in the good times, will you not be jealous of me? Tell me your interpretation of that.
Absolutely. The song is asking a question. It's just basically saying, whether I'm doing great or whether I'm doing horrible, will you be there for me either way? And it's a question of unconditional friendship. And over the years, that song really meant a lot more to me than it did when I wrote it when I was 15, 16 years old. Because, those questions seemed big then, but man, it seemed a lot bigger. And that question got answered a lot of different ways over a lot of different years because, you begin to learn that people around you, they want you to do good, but they don't want you to do better than them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's like, man, you'll do great. Yeah, I believe in you, until you start doing better than them. And then all that, things change. And I watched that happen with us, and I watched it happen, with other people around us. I see it happen with my wife still now with what she does and competing in horses and stuff. It's been kind of an interesting question to go back and ask over and over.
Well, one of the specific lyrics that people always tend to go to is, of course, the dark side of the moon, but I watched the world float to the dark side of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched the world float to the dark side of the moon.
And they talk about the Superman part. Superman 4 is when he's fighting the guy on which actually is the worst Superman of all of them.
Kind of is.
But anyway, you hadn't even seen the movie, so that was a coincidence.
I had not seen that, man, and it freaked me out when I did. I mean, when I went back and watched that movie, it did kind of freak me out because I had never seen that.
That's just crazy. And then what's cool about this is that a lot of times artists, they have the same idea sometimes at the same time, and this energy happens, and a song comes out. Within like 2.5 years, there were like 5 or 6 major artists that these huge songs on the charts about Superman. You guys were one of the first, and then Eminem had one.
I can't be your Superman, can't be your Superman.
Five for Fighting, of course.
Digging for Kryptonite on this one.
Dave Matthews,
I am no Superman.
Flaming Lips.
A Superman.
Brian McKnight. Sometimes people just have this idea and it just kind of spreads across, but it's interesting that was so prevalent in pop culture at that moment, Superman.
I think so, man, and I think maybe a lot of us just grew up around that same era of seeing Superman when we was a little kid and stuff. Not that he hadn't been around a lot longer than that even, but like the main Superman movies. And furthermore, Superman, he kind of got so ingrained in our culture of being, like the Rock.
The perfect human.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think maybe that had something to do with it.
And the American way, truth, justice.
Absolutely.
And it happened at the right time because September 11th happened. And at that moment, those songs were what people kind of reached out to because they needed that superhero. Now we're in this big superhero culture, but it's kind of interesting how that came around the same time, and people listened to those songs a lot during that time because they needed strength, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And I think people definitely gravitate to songs like that in times of struggle like that, and it's important for those things to be within a culture.
That was one of those music videos from that time that people remembered. And I went back to it last night because I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. And it's just so creative. And even the way it's like, the way it's shot and the costumes and everything. What do you remember about the video?
Man, I remember about that video is that shot of me like right up in that man's face. It's like I'm having to sing right there.
You're
and
singing and he's like,
they're like, get a little close. It was 2 different takes. I had to wipe like blue paint off my nose, off his nose. I was like, this is as close as I'm getting this old man, you know? And I'd never seen a video shoot. I'd never seen anything shot like that, ever. I'd never been a part of anything like that. And in some ways, it was so freaking weird to go in there with all those characters. But in another way, to me, at those times, those clothes that we were wearing in that video, those were fancy. I mean, those were nice clothes, We'd never see South Mississippi. I had a couple of nice, like, what polo shirts or something,
Maybe.
Yeah. And
Chess King.
Yeah, exactly. And all this stuff was like really, really expensive clothes, and they're all tailoring them and fit you and all. And I'm not a dress up guy, as you can tell.
yeah.
And for us to be all dressed up, I was like, you just feel like I just felt like an idiot. And it was really soothing to see all them dressed up in those outfits because I was like, okay, if they don't look stupid, then I don't look stupid.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm good.
Well, this is a song that is still so big. It's used in pop culture all the time. It was in the movie Kick-Ass and Corky Romano and Dancing with the Stars.
I took a walk around the world to leave my troubles.
It's one of those songs that people will always use. I mean, to write a song that fits into that moment of culture that forever will be that song. That's pretty awesome. It's like a song like "Don't Stop Believing" or "Pour Some Sugar on Me."
Right.
You know.
I mean, it's cool to see that in there. It's surreal for me because I think in that Corker Romano, and honestly, I didn't know that it was in there until I was watching the movie and it was come on. And I was like, because you know, I mean, it's weird. Like you'll hear your song, but you'll hear it in like Kroger. You know, you're walking through there and you're like, and you just keep on going about your way. But when you hear the chords of one of your songs, I mean, you recognize them, and you know, it's usually on like the pancake aisle or something.
Well, Guitar Hero 5 as well, Sing Star. I mean, it's video games, and that's how, you know, kids these days find a lot of their music, you know. But what does this song mean to you all these years later because you're playing it night after night and seeing 10,000 fans or more singing it, every line that's meant something to them? What does it mean to you these days?
I think my favorite part of that song, and it means more to me now than it did then. That question to me now is a more valuable question than it was for me then. You know, and people say, well, I mean, that's your first hit, and no, it's not my favorite song of ours, you know. But I don't think anybody's first hit is their favorite song of theirs, you know. But people are like, well, do you get tired of playing that song or singing that song? And my answer is absolutely not. The cool thing about it is, you know, is like, so I'm the youngest of 7 kids. And so I grew up listening to whatever my brothers and sisters listened to. And my oldest brothers and sisters was probably, they were old enough to be my parents almost, you know, basically. Yeah. And so a lot of those kids that I see now, it's like, their parents are probably my brother and sister age. So I kind of compare it to like growing up with what your parents listened to, you know, because my parents are a little older. So now those little kids out there, their parents grew up listening to Kryptonite or knew it when they was a teenager. And now those kids have listened to that their whole life. And so like my older brother listened to Boston and stuff. So I never remember like not knowing those kinds of bands. Those kids, they don't remember not knowing Kryptonite, you know? And it's cool to think about that, you know? And my wife kind of picks on me. She said, oh, y'all get played on classic rock. And she just messing with me. But I said, you know what? At least I've been around long enough to get played on classic rock.
Right, I know. That's an honor for sure.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's cool to look out there and see the kids, like a second generation of kids getting into that song again. And whether it's something they discovered on their own, or that they learned it from their parents or their older siblings or whoever, you know, and so it's a whole new thing, you know, and it's cool to look out there and see that.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Three Doors Down and Kryptonite. Is that not an amazing story? These guys are so fun, such nice guys. What are your thoughts on the song, your memories from hearing it, or your thoughts on the interview itself? What other post-90s songs should we cover here? Most of you might say none, and that's fine. We can continue to break down the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but it's kind of fun every now and again when you get an interview like this. Just great guys like that. Anyway, if you like our channel, we invite you to subscribe below and check us out on Patreon, all that good stuff. It's all about keeping the music alive. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.